Rob, why don't you tell us a little about yourself to get started? How did you get here?
Ah, well, that's a long story. Um, well, my name's Rob Richardson. I I've been many things through life, to be honest with you. Mo Most recently, what brought me here, of course, like most men, is the fact that my marriage was falling apart. Um, and honestly, primarily due to my own causing. Um, and I spent, I don't know, the last couple of years in a daze, basically. And when the wife and I had that last fight, I kind of had an epiphany moment where it felt like I woke up for the first time in years. And I realized that I didn't want to be divorced and I didn't want to just walk away. I decided I was going to figure out how to fix it. And sure enough, within 30 days, I found Cass. And the first thing I ever saw of his was the rejection ladder. And it made such fucking perfect sense. Sorry about that. I probably should cuss. It just it resonated so wholly with me about just how ridiculous I was looking at things. And so then I started doing some research on Cass, and I found some old stuff he had done. And I dove into everything I could find on him, and I realized that he was on to something. And so I reached out to him, and he reached out. He got back with me almost immediately, and he hooked me up with some free stuff to try to help me out. And then I think it was 2 weeks later I joined his program, um, and I saw amazing changes very quickly. I cannot speak highly enough of the program and what it has done for me. In less than 90 days, I managed to completely turn around my relationship. My wife and I are in a better place than we've ever been, and I've gone on to pursue my dreams. And I'm actually director of operations at New Rock Press, a new publishing company that I've helped to start. Um, and so, yeah, I owe so much to the program, actually.
Thanks, Rob. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, so a little bit different path than an outcome than what Rob has, but I think he so eloquently said, I think we all kind of got in this position in a similar way, right? That struggling with relationships, struggling with our marriages specifically. Some of us even struggling with a relationship with our kids and extended families. And that was kind of me where I was. And you know, my wife and I were certainly struggling with our relationship. I came back from a hunting trip, and what was me, I was asked to no longer participate with the family. It was a little bit of a shock for me. It was even a little bit more of a struggle for me because it was right at the holiday time, which is makes it probably a little bit more challenging. Just trying to deal with holidays and then deal with the stress of your relationship, which was rocky to begin with, is now has now run aground, and you've got a lot of things you've got to work on dealing with. And so, like Rob and probably the rest of us, after I kind of picked myself up off the floor and found myself in just about any establishment of faith over the next couple of weeks, and found myself on my knees just praying to God Almighty, like, what's going on and where am I? I was able to, to find Cass as well, right? And get into his program, kind of do a little research here, just kind of do some initial kind of, inquiries about it. And like Rob and the rest of us, did an initial screening call, and lo and behold, there popped up Cass. And so, for me, my outcome has been a little bit different. It's been a struggle for me from the very beginning to really get my family back on board. And in fact, it's still quite a bit of a struggle for me. But I am no longer the man I was, 9 months ago. And that's a testament and a tribute really um, to the program itself, the tools that are in the program, the mentors that are in the program, the commitment that the leadership team has to building something special here. And I was able to take the tools of the program. I was able to work with the mentors, and kind of turn my life around where even though my relationship is still not in a great spot, um, I am certainly a much better person. In fact, I would say I'm leaps and bounds better than where I was 9 months ago. And I feel better about myself. I feel like I'm in a much better position. I'm able to give back now some of what I've learned as part of the program, which is really rewarding. And it just helps me along in the process. And so that's kind of how I kind of got here. And look, I just want to thank you, Pete, for having me to be a part of this. This is going to be a special phone call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. All right. So, guys, in the work we do, all too often we tell men to act from their core values. Right? We were told that when we came in, we were told that when we got started. But from that experience, I think we're all too familiar with how much men really struggle with even identifying what those are. Right?
Well,
let alone how to begin that process.
Well, if I can real quick,
Sure.
I had never heard the term core values before I came in the program. I mean, I'd heard of spiritual principles and defects of character and, lots of other personal growth ideas, but I had never really heard anyone talk about what are your core values? How do you define them? What drives you at your innermost core to be, what truly matters to you? What do you truly believe in? And it had never really come up. And honestly, when I heard Cole DeSilva's video in the end of Men in Power, was the first time I'd really heard of the concept. And since that part of the reset doesn't appear in the reset until Man with Purpose, and because it wasn't available, I Googled it, and then I did a ChatGPT search on it, and that was when I first tried to define what my core values were. And I feel part of the problem is when guys come into the program, like me, it was never taught to them. They don't know, and so they're at a loss for it when we tell guys to operate from that place because they've never had anyone explain it to them, and they don't even know how to begin to define it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on that. I mean, that's and often so much of determining what your core values are comes from knowing who you are.
Yes.
And if you've gone through life people pleasing, managing people's expectations, just trying to cover your image, odds are you really have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
How do you even begin?
If I can add on to that for just a moment, right? I think to Rob's point, I didn't hear him call them core values. There's always been a basic set of principles, right, that I've always tried to live by. One of the things I didn't say kind of in my opening comments here, and for those who are watching this for the first time and don't know me, I have a 25-year public service career. The majority of that has been in the U.S. military as a military officer. We take an oath in office, when you become a military officer, right? An officer that says you're going to defend and support the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that, you take this obligation freely without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And there's an ethos that's kind of goes along with that kind of forms your character as a military person. And we didn't call it core values, we didn't call it core principles, but I can probably say almost every military person kind of lived to a standard of what they're supposed to be as part of a representative of the U.S. military. And but the thing that was interesting about that is we didn't stress it on a regular or daily basis, right? Kind of like we do. We come into this program. Things we're trying to do is we're trying to say what defines you, what makes you, what bounds you in a left and right limit and a top and a bottom thing. What's the box that puts Dave Waldman in that says this is who he is, this is who he wants to be, this is who he needs to become, this is who he kind of wants to become. And kind of doing that on a daily basis to kind of reinforce that, I think is something that is very unique to this program. And I think it's a discriminator, honestly, because the focus that we've put on core values, to me, is really the foundational piece that builds the rest of the program. I don't think we can work with men to make them become the new man that they need to be, right? To set themselves apart and building their new relationship, their new marriage, without them really understanding what it is that they, what they're comprised of. What do they believe in? What are their beliefs that they're willing to fight for, or certainly not cross a boundary of. If somebody crosses that boundary, what is that core belief that they need to be established in? And without them putting some thought and without putting some thought about that and putting that down on paper and even putting that down and getting that something that's solidified, it's really hard for them to become the person that they need to be and to really change. So I think it's really
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how so many of them gravitate towards the word integrity, despite having a difficult time knowing who they are or where they're going. I don't know if it's a function of people think they're supposed to say that one, or people really do like it. I think people generally do gravitate towards people who they think they can trust, they think are honest, they think are consistent. I think that's natural for people. But it's a concept that is pervasively sought out, but difficult to follow through on in practice.
Well,
right? And even more difficult when you don't know who you are. Rob, you wanted to add?
yeah, I would say knowing who you are is definitely crucial to this. I believe that integrity is the cornerstone of everything. I truly do. I mean, when I first defined my core values, I listed integrity as one of them, and I also listed honesty. And I later dropped honesty because I don't feel I need to say it. Because you can be honest and not have integrity, but you cannot have integrity and not be honest. So simply saying honest just kind of felt like, ego stroking and tooting my own horn, because I encompass it when I say that I live by integrity. Go ahead.
There's I think it's a Ludwig von Mises quote. He's an Austrian economist. He doesn't say he was wrong. He just deepened his understanding of his own position, and it sounds like that's what you did with honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I claimed honesty because my whole life honesty has been important to me. But like I say, within, I don't know, the first month after I laid out my core values, maybe 2 max, I came to the realization that it was unnecessary to even say that one. But I mean, really, accountability. You have to take accountability to be to have integrity. You have to be consistent to say that you have integrity. People have to be able to count on you. Your word has to mean something in order to have integrity. So if we can't count on you to stand by your word and do what you say you're going to do and follow through to the best of your ability, then you're not being integral. So, I mean, for me, I feel that, a base in integrity is the foundation and the cornerstone for all personal growth and what it truly means to be a man, and I dare say a human being.
Yeah, I think it's, Rob, I think it's one of those things too. You can't walk around and say, I've got integrity, right? You can't hold the sign that says I'm an integral person, right? It's like walking around and saying, I'm really humble. Well, the second you say you're humble, you're not humble, right? You got to start all over again, right? So I think it's another one of those things with integrity. You can't walk around and just say, I'm a person of integrity. You've got to demonstrate that. And I think it's one of those things that you just demonstrate it by doing it, right? Integrity, by definition, Rob, is, and you're the one person that really kind of said this, and I agree with this because I think I go by the same definition. And integrity is really, what are you doing when no one's looking, right? For me, what are you doing when no one's there? What are you doing when the cameras aren't on? What are you doing when your kids aren't watching over your shoulder? What are you doing when your boss isn't looking over your shoulder? What are you doing when you're teleworking and you're not in an office environment when someone can see you there 8 hours of every day? Are you doing the things that you're supposed to be doing? My dad, growing up, he used to say 2 things. He used to say, Dave, the only things that are certain in this world are paying taxes and death. And depending on who you are, whether or not you have integrity or not, maybe you don't pay taxes. But he used to say, the only 2 things that are certain in this world are taxes and death, right? And then he said, the only 2 things you can take with you from this world is your integrity and your character. And so, Dave, I want you to work hard at building and protecting both of those. Now, my dad never knew about core values. He didn't call them that. But when he said that to me, that always resonated with me. And so, you take that from the early days of my childhood about what my dad said to me, you couple that with being a 25 plus year, public servant, military person, integrity and character has been something that's been part of my build for my entire life. And it's very important. I know Rob talked about this as well. When I built my core values out, right behind my belief in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, my family first, the next one is integrity in character. That's how high it is on my list of things. It's just that important, I think, to who you are as a person. And I totally agree with Rob. I think you can't you can't be a trustful person. You can't be a person um, that is trustworthy without having integrity. So I think it's really important.
Oh, I'd like to say one thing before I kick it back to you, Pete. It's funny that your father put it that way, integrity and your character. This goes back to I think what Pete was trying to say about how everyone lists integrity first, or how common that is because, like I say, integrity is the cornerstone. If you strive to be integral, if you strive to always have integrity in your life, and you work towards that core principle on a daily basis, you will develop and build strong character. It is impossible to have a weak character and be integral. So I really feel like integrity, even if it doesn't encompass all the other core values, it definitely promotes and supports all of them. So I really feel like that is why so many people are so quickly drawn to it, is because for society over centuries, those that we respect the most are those who have high integrity and have served the greater good as a result of that. But that's just kind of to your point.
And even if they're not drawn to it, right, Rob, it's almost like they should be steered. It's I almost feel like as even as we work with them and as they go through their core values, and a lot of them have some really good ones, and they really put some thought and effort into it. But for me, when I don't hear something that kind of resembles or kind of points towards a degree of integrity, it's almost like something that we encourage them to think about and adding into that, because I think it's just that important.
I agree.
Want your reflection on this based on the direction we're going with some of this conversation here. Here's a quote I had heard recently: most lies are lived, not spoken.
Well, I lie to myself better than anyone ever has. I think that ties in there pretty closely.
Well, and I think the other part of that, right, is I've always lived by the mantra is that actions speak louder than words, right? And to me, someone can say they're going to do something all they want to, but how's the song go? I know you're lying, your lips are moving, right? And and so. And look, and I'm not saying I've not been guilty of this. I mean, I think we all probably have. And just to be really clear here, it's not like my integrity's been beyond reproach my entire life. And as Rob said, I strive really hard to make sure that it's paramount and it's high on my list. But all of us fail. All of us slip. But I'd like to think that I've done a really good job of building on that. But for me, um, you know, having when you say you're going to do something, that's fine. But until I actually can see you actually moving down that path and consistently, right, consistently upholding what you said you were going to be doing, then that's to me that's more important than if someone tells you you're going to be able to do something. Because I think people just either don't have the integrity or the character to follow through, or they just you know maybe have a problem on the dishonesty side of the thing. So I don't know which it is, but that's kind of my thought.
I I I agree with what Dave was just saying. I think more to your point though, Pete, years ago I lived a lie. My entire life was a lie, predicated on that which I was taught that I was supposed to be. And that lie was so ingrained in me that I believed that that's who I was. That's who not only was that what I was bred to be, that was the man I was supposed to be. That's who I was at my core. And it wasn't until I got to the point to where I absolutely hated the man I saw in the mirror and despised life and everything about myself that I was first introduced to, spiritual growth. Is when I went to rehab. I joined Narcotics Anonymous, 12 steps. And for the first time in my life, I realized that it wasn't me that I hated. It was the lie. It was the mask I was wearing. It was what I was pretending to be. And the greatest question of my life came out of that moment was when I realized that that wasn't who I was. That was who I was pretending to be because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And in that moment, I realized that I had no clue who I was. And that was when I began the journey of who are you? And I can honestly tell you that I know who I am today. But for a long time, I didn't. And who I am today is based on the truth that I find within me, in my center, from my core values, from my belief structure, from the experiences of my life. And it's not what someone has told me is supposed to be who I am. And I believe that a lot of people like me convince themselves that the lie that they've been told, the lie they tell themselves, is the truth. And they live by it, even though it hurts them and it's detrimental and it brings misery. And there can be no joy because you're not living to your authentic self. You're not truly being honest with yourself because you're so caught up in the delusion that you can't see the truth. And honestly, I think that's more towards the point of what you're saying there. Um, but before I pass it back, I would like to ask a question, guys. In my opinion, the whole honesty thing's kind of tricky because if I tell you something I believe to be true that is a falsehood, but I believe it's true, I am not lying, even though it's wrong. And we often get caught up in that. This is where integrity plays in is once I become aware that I'm wrong, then I must promptly admit it. Then I must change, or then it is a falsehood, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I think that's critical to underscore the importance of properly orienting yourself to reality in
Yes.
terms of where the truth is actually found. I mean, you
I,
can't
I,
just get like, here's the thing. If I got up right now and ran full speed into the wall, I'm going to get hurt no matter what I think.
agreed. Agreed.
That's real. I mean, if I, let's
Should we
say we
test
have a
that
guy,
theory, Pete?
I mean, when we're wrapping up, I'll do it. Okay. I'll go full Kool-Aid man on the wall behind me. But if we get a guy that comes into the group who's angry because his wife is cheating on him, and he says, I think I'm going to wait for I can't imagine this going on like this. I'm not a man this kind of thing happens to. Next time I see this guy, I'm going to take him out. He's being honest.
Yes.
He's wrong, but
Yes.
he's being honest.
I agree. I agree. Not exactly where I was going with that, but yes, I agree.
Okay.
And see, this is one of the fun, like most of us, I didn't have a group like this. I didn't have a group of men who were all trying to improve, that were all moving in the direction of personal growth and trying to become better. And I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have a support group that I could go to and talk to about the stuff in my head that honestly, when you look at it from a broader perspective, didn't make any goddamn sense. But I was believing it, and I was allowing those beliefs to impact my actions, which were basically working kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I was destroying things based off of the lie in my head because I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I agree with you 100%, Pete. That's one of the jobs that we do as mentors. When guys come in and they're like we were when we came in, where, I mentioned the other day, I looked at my journals from back in September. They were all about what she was doing and how she was wrong and my victim triangle and my pain. And within like 2 months, everything in it shifted to I was fucking up this and I need to pay more attention to that. And I'm so falling short on this stuff. And I need to, work on my core values and I need to be more integral and I need to show up as me. So that's kind of our job, is to help them to see that the lies that they're telling themselves aren't necessarily true. And if we can get them to see that and reframe it just a little bit, then we can get them to start moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
So
Rob, the thing
yes,
I would add
the
I would
reality
add on to
check's
that
important.
the thing I would add on to that about this group is, and you were kind of getting there towards the end, but I would just summarize it as accountability, right? This group of men not only is a place where you can bring your problem, you can kind of discuss this, but it's a group of men that are going to hold you accountable, right? To the position of, hey, Dave, you said you were going to do this, or hey, Dave, you're looking at this through rose-colored glasses. You might think that that vase is blue, but that vase is really white, right? And and I can kind of say that I'm colorblind. Okay, I can see blue and white, but you kind of get my point there.
I,
But I think,
I, I do get your point. I think it's important to acknowledge though, it's not really that the group holds you accountable. It's that the group gives you the skills and helps you to hold yourself accountable. And that's where the men really start to grow, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. But when needed, the men can hold you accountable, right? Yeah, I agree with that, and I love, and I just need to comment on Pete, and then I'll certainly kick this back in. Or you got other things you want to talk about. Rob, you put that so beautifully about the mask, and I was thinking about that as you were talking. And that's exactly where I was, right? I had this mask on of what I thought that my marriage was supposed to be, how I was supposed to be a dad, what I thought I was doing from the right things, and really, getting that all torn down, getting that all taken away from you, and then being at that rock bottom place and coming into a program like this where this group of men and this program can help us take the rest of that mask off so that we can work on rebuilding that person. I think that's a beautiful analogy. I absolutely love that. I think we got to figure out a way to incorporate that a little more. I love it.
All right.
Thank you.
What do you think motivates people to be dishonest or not have integrity then? If it's so important
Fear,
and so critical and so many people seek it out and search for it, what's motivating people to not follow through on it?
fear of
Peer
not
pressure,
having what I want or getting what I need.
FOMO, or peer pressure. Yeah, look. I think there. It's today's society just seems like it's certainly so much different than when I was growing up. I mean, there's so many different things that you have now. You've got instant access to information. Everyone's got a cell phone on. Mine's around here somewhere. I don't even know where I've got it, but I saw James holding his up earlier. Everyone's got a cell phone, access to the computer, the internet. Social media is abound. You got a 24-hour news cycle. You're inundated with information, and it's almost like it's hard to, I don't want to say hide, but it's kind of hard to hide now. I mean, people can call you out for certain things. And I think Dave Waldman's opinion, I think folks now are like, it's hard to have a difference of opinion because people just it's too easy for people to sit behind a computer or a cell phone and call you out and call you names and 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 bash you there a little bit. And so I think it's really hard for people to kind of stand on a set of views and stand up for themselves because there is just so many ways that society kind of is almost forcing you to bring you along to to a certain way of thinking. And it's been challenging because and I'm not going to put all this blame onto parents, but I think it's been challenging because I think even parents have had a hard time with this over the last couple of decades of kind of helping instill these kind of values into our kids. And so I think if you take a look at all that, we're becoming a world full of really skepticism. I think we've lost our ability as a society to have value and integrity and character, and have it be an attribute that is something that somebody admires and lives up to. And I just think it's really challenging given everything that's kind of out there, and that's something I think, like I said, is waning in our society here. And look, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but to and to quote Charles Barkley, it said at one time, I could be wrong, but I doubt it, right? And I hope I'm wrong here. But it just seems to me like with everything that we're facing as a society, all of the information that is available to us, it's just hard nowadays to be a person that can stand up on your own 2 feet and have integrity and character in the face of all the things that we're looking at.
Okay. Rob?
Um, I can add to that just a little bit. I agree with Dave. I mean, I think the real problem can be traced back to societal influences over the last, 40 years, maybe a little longer. Um, but the truth of the matter is in today's society, instant gratification is so powerful and it's everywhere. You know, the cell phones, the internet, porn. It, when I was a kid, you wanted to watch something, you had to actually make sure you were sitting in front of the TV at the right time to watch it, or hope that the VCR would record it. Nowadays, my kids can watch whatever they want, whenever they want, right now, and I think this is part of the attention span issue. And I believe that we have taught the last couple generations especially, and before that, that that instant gratification, getting what you want, is what it's all about. And I feel like so many people have learned that it is easier to lie, to compromise your beliefs, and just do whatever it takes to get what I want or have what I need, rather than to take the hard route of standing true to your conviction and taking the longer time to get there. Because if I can cut a corner and get what I want right now, that's what our society has taught everybody. That's better. Now it's better. And so people aren't prepared to work for something that may take weeks, months to get, when they could just lie, cheat, or steal. And
Rob,
I think it's promoted it. Go ahead.
I think you're right. Corruption and dishonesty just seems to be something that's running rampant out there anymore. And again, in a society where you have access to so much information, the lines between what right and wrong are now blurred, right? I think no matter what your opinion is or something on something, we've talked about some very basic rudimentary things, but just pick any kind of challenging issue that there's out there today. You can have an opinion on something, and I bet you go to the internet and you can find just as many people for one side of it as you can for just the other side of it. And it becomes really challenging to kind of figure out what's the right side, or what's the right, what's the right part of that, right side of that issue to kind of be on. And I think it comes back to, you're going to have to be able to do your own self-assessment based and steeped in your own core values. If you don't know who you are as a person, if you don't know what you stand for as a person, it's going to be easy to get drawn into that kind of a dichotomy there, both of those issues that you're going to have to try to balance and work through. And when you can stand strong in your own core values, particularly something like integrity and character, you're going to have a little bit of a simpler time knowing where you stand on a particular issue, especially since if it's a hot topic, a hot societal issue. I think that would be something that will help you out. But I agree with Rob. I think corruption, dishonesty, try to make a quick buck out there now is so rampant that it's hard now. And again, I think you couple that with, Rob said, the last 30, 40 years, I probably won't disagree with that. Again, I don't have data to back this up. I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I think just as we as a society have moved away from kind of teaching some of these core components, some of these basic components, and instilling this in our children. And I think that's one of the things that becomes really challenging in today's society. That's just, I think it's just really hard.
Okay. All right. I'm hearing a bit of a cycle here. Davey brought up skepticism. I think skepticism tends to promote cynicism. Cynicism over time will fertilize the ground for nihilism, and nihilism will quickly rob any meaning from someone. And when someone doesn't have any larger meaning they're pursuing, it becomes very easy to just live in the now, take the instant gratification, do whatever you need to do to get whatever you want today, and forget everything else, right? How do we interrupt?
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like you're just flowing through life sometimes, right? Without purpose, without these foundational principles, right, Pete? If I heard you correctly, it's almost like you're going through the motions of life. And I just think there's so much more to life than just that. But
And it's so interesting though, because I see that as a fairly widespread problem right now. I'm not sure how you guys see that, if you see that pretty pervasive throughout the culture. I mean, whether it's in the younger generation deciding, I mean, how many stories do you see? Well, for instance, here's a statistic that blows my mind every time I hear it. For every 100 South Koreans alive today, there will be 4 great-grandchildren. In 2 generations, that's a 96% extinction rate. We shut the planet down over a virus with an under 2% fatality rate. What kind of no vision for the future feeds that type of culture? And that's not directly going to tie directly to integrity. I'm talking about the type of absence of meaning that drives people forward. And how much easier it becomes for somebody to lie when that's what the culture is doing. And it's not just South Korea. South Korea is just the glaring example. If you look at the number of people in their teens and 20s right now who will tell you they never want to have children. That's just in the United States.
I have a son who has no interest in children or marriage. So I understand where you're coming from. I don't know. I tell you, if you try, I mean, this could be a whole separate podcast, Pete. From the, I've listened to my 21-year-old son talk about this, and I can see it from his point of view. With the state of our country, with the state of the world, I can see where he's not interested in the idea of bringing children into this and what that could entail, and having to live through what may be when he's trying to raise them, or what they will inherit from us. So I can kind of see it. And honestly, the way our society is set up, and I know this is something that Cass strongly disagrees with, but the truth of the matter is right now, the way society is set up, there's absolutely no incentive for a man to marry a woman. It puts them in a severely legal disadvantage. And let's be honest, society actually promotes families out of marriage more than they do marriage. It's messed up the way that is handled in our country, and hopefully we can get that straightened out, because it's detrimental. We should be supporting marriage. We should be supporting unions. We should help. A girl should not get more money for having 3 children with 3 separate men out of wedlock through the government support system than a man with 2 or 3 kids who is married to a woman and doing the best he can. It is actually beneficial for a woman to divorce her husband for the benefits and the services that she'll receive from the state, and that is detrimental. And I can see where that influences a lot of the younger generation about the concepts of marriage and of children.
Right. And what I'm aiming more at is the role integrity plays in allowing you to build a life that has meaning. That's an example to the next generation to pursue a life with meaning, that gives them a vision for the future that includes hope. Or not hope necessarily, that's probably not the right word. A positive outlook for what the future of the world is going to look like. Because what I'm getting at is every lie you tell stacks, every lie that's either lived or told stacks on the one that came before it. And it drives you further and further away from the life you should be having. I don't mean you, Rob, necessarily speaking.
No, I know what you mean. Okay, and I get where you're coming from on that, but here we go back to the root problem. This is not being taught.
Right.
I said it. I said it in one of my Instagram posts. A man who will stand for nothing will fall for anything. which is why it's so important to define that which you believe so you know when it's time to stand up. And for some reason, we're not teaching this. And young men are not learning this. Young women are not learning this. They're not learning to define their beliefs. And worse yet, look at Christianity, for example. Since 1970, Christianity has dropped from 98 percentile in America down to 63%. Now, I'm not advocating for Christianity or any particular religion at all. I'm simply saying that the faith-based organization of America has dropped from 98% to 63%. So this is a problem.
And there's a correlation there, right, Rob? That's what you're basically saying.
Well, I'm saying the problem is the lack of some defining faith. Faith gives us the idea that everything that life matters. My life matters. Your life matters. Everyone matters. And through faith, regardless of which religion you take, just the understanding that all of life has meaning and every single person is an intricate part of this greater thing, and that it is all somehow tied together and that it all works together. This gives us drive to do something better, to be good, to try to build something better for the line. And because that has fallen away and we're not teaching things like faith and to stand up for what you believe and to be honest and to have integrity and to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Since we're not teaching this stuff anymore, there's a vacuum. And we all know what happens when there's a vacuum. Whoever's got the loudest voice and offers the quickest, simplest, easiest fix to make you better and happy right now is what people will believe. And that, I believe, is the root of this problem. And I think it's why integrity is so damn important. And it's why we push, we talk about it so much. And I think it's why people grasp for it, is because they've got that void, they've got that vacuum, and they just want something that they can believe in to fill it. And integrity is something that everybody's heard. And I think all the guys instantly want to go to that because I mean, let's be honest, we all understand at some level what it will do for our life and make it better.
Yeah,
It does.
Pete, if I just get real quick, I think that I'll throw in there is I think, again, we go back to this society of instant gratification as well, right? So it's no longer about teaching our kids and teaching our society the importance of marriage, the importance of raising children, the joy that you can get of having children in your life, and to be a part of their lives and to teach them how to be great members of your community. It's integrity plays a part of that, but I think when you look at all of the things where self-gratification comes in, all access to things that we have now, credit cards, all of that kind of thing, I think the younger generation they see the struggles that we go through now, right? I think, Rob, to your point, they see things like, is marriage really something that is steeped in faith and have faith that's part of that, regardless of whatever your religious values are? Or is it really just becoming some contractual thing that I'm going to pay for it in the end because that's the way our litigious system has been set up now, right? And that is, it's just we'll just get married. If it doesn't work out, we'll just get divorced, right? And it's almost like that's the attitude now, whether as opposed to holding true to the oath that you take, right? Go back to my earlier point about taking an oath as a military officer, but what about the oath you made to each other? What about the promises you made to each other, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, till death do us part, right? Those are not just words, in Dave Waldman's opinion, right? Those aren't just words that you just speak in front of a bunch of people. So you go through a party and say, yeah, I'm married. It's an ethos to live by. It's an ethos that, when you need to, right, to have the integrity and the character to see the tough times through in your marriage, that's when it works. Love is not an emotion. Love is a choice, right? And so you really have to hold true to that and have to have the integrity and the character that when times are tough in your relationship, and they will be, right? It's how you deal with those tough times that allow you to have the longevity in your relationship. Again, in my opinion, right? If you know how to properly work through those issues, if you know how to deal with those with integrity, within character, within your core values, you can work through anything. And I think that's part of the key of having a long lasting and loving relationship.
And to wrap it back to another one-liner, like Rob started that discussion with there, Viktor Frankl, I think it was, who is famous for saying, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." Is that Frankl?
Yes, I think so. I think so. But yes, I know that quote, and it is true. In fact, I heard Jordan Peterson, quoted it. Um, can't remember, but no, yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
so to move it forward, how do we show them? Because look, here's the thing: I live in the Chicago area. There was a whole party downtown last week. There was a lot of things going on. None of it had anything to do with the stuff we're talking about. And that's, I can tell you, that's where everybody who was in the Chicago Teachers Union was. They weren't having this discussion. So I'm not waiting around for the school to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm going to come back to my faith here in just a moment, and just something that my mom and dad taught me through faith, right? Again, grew up Catholic, and it's interesting what you learn in talking to your parents, right? Actually having a conversation with them at some point, and to find out all these years later, what you guys were married 65 years, things weren't always rosy between the two of you. I had no idea, right? I never saw my parents fight, and hear my mom, oh yeah, there's a time your dad walked out one time. I didn't think he was coming back. What? None of this. But to your point, she said that she would go and talk to a priest about some of these, and the priest gave her some what I think is very profound wisdom. Again, it's not having to do with faith, but he just said the best thing that you can do, my wife, Marianne, the best thing you can do for your kids, the best thing you can do for your relationship is to set a good example, right? Is to demonstrate and to show what a loving relationship looks like, to demonstrate and to show what a loving marriage should look like, to demonstrate and show that when you have a disagreement, what reconciliation looks like. And so, Pete, for me, when you say, what can we do about it? Well, I mean, outside of the obvious of try to figure out ways and programs and develop programs so we can start to educate the next generation, start to educate the current generation as well, but leave a legacy here, which I think is something that we're doing here as part of the Morrow Marriage program here. We've got great programs for current relationships. We're doing some things for youth that are coming up. We're doing some things from the dating side of the house. There's a whole bunch of new great programs coming on board. The best thing that we can do is walk the walk as well as we talk the talk, right? And I think doing that, people were like, well, that Dave Waldman guy, he's different. He's not the same person he was a year ago. What's different about him? I want to go find out what's different about Dave Waldman, right? I want to go find out what's different about Rob Richardson. And I want to ask questions. Hey, what are you doing? And I think that's the best thing that we can probably do.
That's what I'm trying to do tonight. I got Rob Richardson and Dave Waldman here to ask questions.
Go, Rob.
I agree with Dave. Being the example is so important. Being willing to stand up and speak the hard truths. And that's something that I've always been able to do. I just haven't always been willing to do. And since coming into the program, I pride myself on the fact that I am totally willing to be the only one standing in opposition in a room full of people that are all in agreement, because I believe it is that voice of the question, the devil's advocate, as you will, that helps others to be like, oh yeah, huh, and then they'll speak to. And I think we need more people doing that, and that's part of being integral. Stand up for what you think. Speak your truth, even if it's in contrary to everyone else. I'd rather stand alone than bow. So if I believe it's right, I'm going to stand up, even if I'm standing there by myself. And if I'm voted down, so be it, but I'm at least going to speak it. And I believe we need to do that. And I believe that when we're wrong, we need to promptly admit it. And when we fall short of our ideals and what we want, we take accountability for that. This is all about showing how to be integral. But I think it is equally as important, like this podcast, that we do everything we can to teach this to as many people as we can. That we try to explain how it works. And more importantly, we try to explain how they can go about understanding it for themselves, which is why in my program I added defining belief and defining personal values and how to use those to understand what your core values are. Because I felt that so many guys didn't understand the process. Because it's not literally, I mean, you truly can. Cass talks about, for now, if you don't have any, adopt mine, start living mine, and it'll develop. But, and for some of the guys that works. But for me, I was like, no, that's not authentic. I can't do that. I got to figure out what it means to me. And, trying to get to the root of the past experiences, the major stories we tell in our life that have built up our belief structure for the world and how we live and how we see things. By using those, we can find the common traits in it to figure out what values are whole and important to me. And by defining those, then we can figure out which ones actually stand up for which one of these do I find to be the most important when trying to make a decision that affects my life, right? And those are the core values that matter, the ones that you can apply to every decision, every moment. Is this the right thing based off of these things? And when guys can start to define those things for themselves, like in my program, I don't want to hear integrity, not unless you want to tell me what integrity means to you. I need you to define the word, because it's just a word unless you can tell me what that means for you. How does that apply to you? How can you apply that in your day-to-day life? How can you apply that to every single decision in a split-second moment's notice? Because that's the beauty of this, is once you define these things and you start to repeat them to yourself in the morning and decide, okay, today I am going to follow through on everything I said I was going to do. It becomes such an integral part of the way you think that problem solving becomes so much easier, because when you're confronted with a problem, you instantly relate it to these values and what's the right choice. And then you start living by that which you believe to be true, right, and good, rather than that which is easy or profitable or will, make people like, or whatever the situation. So I think education is equally important, if not more, than just studying the example, although that is definitely important.
Yeah, to add on to that, Rob, I would add on, right? We have to lead with integrity and character, right? To kind of bring this back as part of this, we have to teach it, we have to demonstrate it, but we have to lead with integrity and character. And part of leading with integrity and character is also accepting responsibility when things don't go well. I think, to your point, and be able to take the appropriate actions to rectify that and to reconcile that. Look, leadership in principle is easy. Excuse me, leadership and kind of concept is easy, but enacting leadership in principle is really hard. It's challenging, right? It's easy to understand what it's supposed to be from a leadership perspective. What are the characteristics of leadership? What are the traits of leadership? What are the principles of leadership? What are the leadership styles? It's easy to understand that and go, wow, that's a pretty easy concept. But to actually implement the leadership skills that you need to do to be able to lead with integrity and character is really hard and really challenging. And it's something that else that we kind of need to teach us as part of this. But look, I totally agree with Rob. There's so many things that we can do with it, but we've got to start by getting out there, leading with integrity and character, demonstrating what integrity and character really look like. But then I think as part of that, in full circle, you've got to just be that great example, so people can say, I want to be like that person. And they might not be able to say that and put their finger on that, that Rob or James or Pete have a high degree of integrity and character, but they can sense that something is different. They're like, I want to be like that person. What do I need to do to go be that person?
And importantly, I want to mirror the characteristics that person is demonstrating so that I can be the most I can be. Not so that I can be Dave Waldman, not so I can be Rob Richardson, so that I can apply these same principles to my life in a way that orients me to the right goals, and I move in that direction.
I tell you, when we're doing dumb shit, we're doing things that aren't right, when we're fucking people over, when we're lying, when we're cheating, when we're doing everything underhanded we can to try to get ahead, it makes our life hard. It makes it difficult. When you breed out malice, malice is all around you. So can you imagine that it works in reverse?
Well, and
When you start acting with honesty, integrity, compassion, when you start showing up and doing what you're supposed to do, one, you're not actively fucking messing things up, you're not actively destroying things, but you're actually working towards making it better. So I mean, can you
and
imagine
that's
that it would get better?
well, but speaking to somebody who was born in 2003, for instance. Okay, we're doing this in 2024.
No
Who's
problem.
used to the instant gratification we've been talking about this entire time being a problem. That's all they know. They're going to look at you and say something along the lines of, that'll make things easy, right?
Well, I mean, my 21-year-old son, I've
No.
always told hard is, easy is not the right way.
Well,
Um,
it's just so many deviations from pursuing integrity or, being honest are based on avoiding some form or some degree of suffering, even suffering that's necessary and leads towards meaning.
Agreed. And this is why I've mentioned multiple times that I'm not sure youth programs work. I believe that what a man needs, I mean, let's be honest, suffering promotes personal growth. Pain, our loss. Dave, let's be real. I came into this program knowing that I had to do whatever it took to fix it, right? You came in broken knowing I got to do something, and you were open to the idea of taking in new ideas, trying something different because what I'm doing is not fucking working. This is a necessary step for personal growth. And I believe that the true change in society comes because once you get the experience, once you've had the pain, the struggles, the suffering, and you come to that point where you're willing to try something new and you're willing to learn these new skills and implement them into your life, every man touches how many children? And I mean, I've got a lot, but on average, we'd say, at least what, 2.5 is that the standard in America? So by teaching men how to implement these into their lives and make their lives better and stuff like Cass is doing, we are affecting them and their children and their children's children. And I don't believe that we're going to get a bunch of 20-year-olds to start picking this up until they're in their late 30s. Going back to the Christianity statistics, 1 in 3 children raised in a Christian home will leave their faith by age 30. 1 out of 5 raised outside of Christianity will join the faith before age 36. If something happens in your late 20s, early 30s, it's called life and it's called suffering and it's called life experiences. And during these times, either A, you will turn completely away, or B, you will turn towards looking for that answer. And I don't believe, I mean, we can talk and we can try to get the message out, but the truth of the matter is they have to want it. And more often than not, you don't want it until you've had to walk through the fire. You come out the other side and you're just begging for something.
And yeah, we have to be prepared and able to deliver it to them when they open to it.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to hit rock bottom sometimes before you even know that you're ready to change or you need to change.
And there is I know there's an evolutionary component to kids challenging their parents, and they're from about the age 14 to around the late 20s, almost 30. Kids are hardwired to reject whatever their parents tell them. It's part of the way they seek out another family group, so they diversify the gene pool. It actually happens. The brains are actually that averse to it, to where somebody else's kids will listen to you better than your own kids do.
Well, hopefully they're trying to launch too at the same time, right? You don't want
Yes, it's all part of the same process. It's all part of the same process. And it's a matter of being ready, being prepared, being ready to deliver this information to them at the right time when they're ready to hear it, and having set the example and established the example over time so that they are actually open to your transmitting it to them at that point, right? To a large degree with your own children.
Yeah, and also society as a whole. I mean, I believe that's what we're building here with this group. And honestly, it's a Eastern phrase, but the truth, I've seen it in my own life that whenever the student is ready, a master will always appear. That we have to do what we can do to be to build the group and to have the support necessary in place so that when people get to the point where they're ready to hear, where they're ready to learn, they're ready to grow, it's already here and it's in place. And I believe we're doing that with the program and this podcast, and we keep adding to it to try to help reach more and more men. And we can't force feed this to anybody, but we sure as hell can make sure it's ready. So when they walk through the door, we can help.
Rob, Dave,
Yeah.
any closing thoughts as we wrap up here?
I mean, look, I think from my perspective, you know, for me, Rob was kind of just hitting on this in his last comment. You can't, as much as we'd like to, I think sometimes to take a a sledgehammer to some people and be like, you got to wake up, you got to get back on the right track here. I mean, we have a responsibility, I think, to certainly to steer others where we see them getting ready to fall, right? I think there is a responsibility there as a good human being. I think there's a biblical responsibility there as well. But you can't force anybody, right? Pete, you even taught me that. Have the serenity to understand what you can change, to the things you can change, the things you cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think it's the same when it comes to things like having integrity in character. The only things that we can do here, as part of our group, is to be prepared, right? To help write the lessons and to teach this correctly, and to be there when those people come to us and say, I'm at rock bottom. I need to change. I need to do something different. And to be able to then teach them what that looks like and set a good example for them. So, for me, that's what I think we can do. I think we're doing a lot of great things here as part of the program to be able to do that. Pete, I think you're doing a phenomenal job here in the part that you play here with helping us get the nice guy out and running podcasts like this. And um, my closing thought here is just thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Rob, you're welcome.
Yeah. I definitely agree, and I appreciate you doing this, Pete. I think this is wonderful. I think people need to hear this stuff. And integrity, trying your best to live a life of integrity will impact your life in so many ways. But I would say the most important way is the fact that when I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror, I'm happy. I'm happy with the man I see. I know that I'm doing my best to live life based off of my beliefs and my values. And it's not, it's always based in what I truly believe to be right and good, and not just what's easy or convenient for the moment now. And because of that, I go to bed at night and I sleep like a baby. And when I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror, I don't see a hypocrite. I don't see a thief. I don't see a liar. I don't hate the man I see. In fact, I'm actually amazed at the man I've become. And I feel pride in the fact that I live my life by these standards. And if if you don't know how to live a life of integrity, start doing some YouTube searches. Jordan Peterson's a great place to start. Come to our group. We will help you any way we can. But it will change your life, and you just have to do it and have a little consistency and start doing it, and you'll see the differences in your life pretty quickly. And other than that, I appreciate being here. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Rob. So I just wanted to close by saying, anyone who's watching this and is considering this topic, integrity or core values in general, just keep in mind the lack of your best hurts everything around you, including yourself. You've got to place where you're going and who you're becoming above who you currently are, and aim at that every single day. Aim at the highest possible good you can, because proper being is actually a journey, not a destination. And there's no way you can actually form enough of an opinion on a situation to decide the lie you want to live or tell is the correct path forward for you, because you don't have enough knowledge about where you need to be in this world to actually make that decision. So the person you're fooling is yourself. So real quick, Dave Waldman, where can guys find you if they're in the program?
Where can they find me? I mean, like physically, or
Do you host a call? Do you host a call? Do you have anything going on within the program
oh
that you?
yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry about that. I was like, well, find me. I'm trying to be incognito. Given the line of work that I do. Yeah. So, no, for guys, it's certainly in the program. Look, I try to be on as many of the calls as I can each and every week. Certainly, they can always reach a DM me directly, but I do run a spiritual leadership call once a week, usually on Thursday nights at 4 o'clock on the West Coast time, 7 o'clock here on the East Coast time. And it's really about developing, the next batch of men and women to be leaders in their home, right? To lead in their home, to lead in their kids, to lead in their community, to certainly lead at work, and to put that in the context of doing that through spirituality. So, a lot of great concepts there, a lot of great traits, a lot of great characteristics, a lot of good things that you can learn there. So, looking forward to seeing guys, and hopefully we build this a little bit more. Some gals come into the program as well.
Rob, how about you? Where do we find you in the program?
Yeah, I teach the reflection and looking within class. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m. EST. I deal with self-reflection, meditation, mindset, things of this nature. I help you to figure out who you are so you can be true to that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you again for coming out. Thank you, James, for facilitating this and getting us up and running here. I know we got some big things coming up with the program the next couple of weeks. There's a book coming out, Cass's book, Disrupting Divorce, The New Man, hits bookstores. Rob, is that the 16th of September?
Yes, it goes on sale on September 16th.
So
Pre-orders should be up sometime in the next week. You can find that at newrockpress.com.
Excellent. All right, guys. Thank you very much tonight. I appreciate you guys coming out.
Yeah, you bet. Good conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.